Final question. I may have more final questions for you, by the way. It's such an honor to speak with you, Lord Monckton. On the issue of Russia and Putin, now, Margaret Thatcher was very instrumental in getting the Iron Curtain down and seeing, the Berlin Wall, et cetera, come down. How do you think she would feel about Vladimir Putin's, excessive force in, Ukraine and that whole area?
Well, she would not like that. She would realize that this is a new form of Russian imperialism. Russia, of course, is smarting over the loss of particularly the Ukraine, which is important to it because it's the big grain-growing area of Central Asia. And it's vital for feeding the Russian population. And so it really matters to Russia to try and get the Ukraine back under its sphere of influence for that rather basic reason of feeding its population, because the climate, just about everywhere else, is too bloody cold to grow crops.
Right.
This aggression by Putin would be something that she would be worried by, and she would also be worried by the way that Putin is funding the environmental lobbying campaigns in the UK to oppose fracking. So that, for instance, the second biggest deposit of shale gas in the world is under Blackpool. And the local authority there has decided, Lancashire County Council has decided literally just this week, that it's not going to allow that resource to be developed. And the reason it's done that is that Putin has paid very large amounts of money to environmental campaign groups to oppose it.
Wow.
And the government, which is very weak on this environmental issue, is not going to do anything about it. And so this resource that could potentially make Britain entirely independent in oil and gas is now, for the moment anyway, not going to happen because Putin has been using Russian taxpayers' money to subsidize our environmental movement. And this kind of thing she would be very angry about, and she would make sure that our security services were onto that and monitoring it, as she did when the communists in Russia were paying for the miners' strike with Scargill. And they had trained Scargill, they paid at least $20 million, we were able to trace, to the miners to try to make that strike succeed and get rid of Margaret Thatcher, who the Russians rightly regarded as fatal to their future existence as a communist state.
Right.
So Margaret made sure that the security services were tasked to watch for that kind of thing. Now Cameron is completely naive. He's a child in these matters.
Wow.
He doesn't realize that this kind of economic warfare is waged all the time by Russia in particular. I mean, at one stage, during Margaret Thatcher's reign, Russia was printing £50 notes and flooding the British market with them in the hope of creating inflation.
Wow.
Fortunately, it didn't work because, we had a very active security service that wasn't just looking at what the communists were up to, but it was looking at this kind of economic warfare as well. It knew that kind of thing happened, and it stopped it. Within weeks, we'd stopped it, because what we did is we quietly began printing 50-ruble notes and circulating them all over Russia. And then we let them know that we'd done this as a tit for tat.
Right.
And in no time at all, the Russians said, okay, hadn't we both better back off? This would not happen again. But you need a Prime Minister who knows what she's doing in order to fight that kind of battle. And the present Prime Minister in Britain doesn't know that. And so, it is very unsatisfactory because the economic effect of Putin selling gas into Europe, this is what his interest in all this is, he's selling gas into Europe from Siberia at 4 times the world price. Whereas if we had started producing serious quantities of gas in Blackpool, which is certainly the largest reserve in Europe, and feeding that via the grid, which already exists, the gas grid, all the way into Europe, then the price of gas would come down to the market price, and Putin would lose a very, very large part of the revenue he gets from that pipeline. So that's what's in it for him, and you can imagine that Margaret Thatcher and we would be all over this and make absolutely sure it was made clear to him that if he went on interfering, we would take steps. But no, Cameron is too weak. He doesn't want to cause that kind of trouble internationally, and so he'd rather just see Britain go down the plug economically and not develop this precious resource. than get on and develop it.